into the show. Thanks for tuning in on this Good Friday, April the 10th, 2020. Welcome into the show. It is 9 a.m. on the East Coast. This is your 6 a.m. super early morning wake-up call out west. Thanks for watching. As always, we appreciate it. Hope you're doing well. Took the day off yesterday. Feeling better. Getting back to normal and feeling like we're up for the weekend. Hopefully you're staying safe, following CDC guidelines, and doing okay. For all of you out there watching and listening, I appreciate it and love the fact that we have people following the show. And one of the things that I was looking at last night in prepping for today's show is a rumor started flying around that there are rumblings. This is from @GlennCrooks. There are rumblings in the soccer community that the U.S. Soccer Development Academy on the girls and boys side may be terminated. Announcement could come as early as tomorrow. Now, I've checked with sources who have not heard any of this. So, I just want to state on the record, I have no idea. I don't have any, leaning one way or the other. For the people I've checked in with said they haven't heard any of this. So I don't know. It's interesting. I don't like the Development Academy because I felt like it created more issues than it solved. What I would prefer to see with the U.S. Soccer Development Academy is if it remained in place, that it should have gone away from its current format and structure of gatekeepers and been open and available for everyone to join, and for the level to be based on sporting merit, and i.e. promotion and relegation, and that way you were on a team playing at somewhat at an appropriate level, while trying to minimize and reduce the impact on travel. I think that is a piece where it's not looked at enough. The amount of travel, the amount of money families are expected to pay to be able to facilitate their child's soccer experience. And so I think this is a, current format, not good enough. It's too insular to competition. It's too sanitized. I've just not seen the Development Academy in its current construct actually create world-class players. I think we've seen that. For a country this large, we should be putting out a lot more really, really good players with the potential to be world-class than what we see. And I think that the structure of the academy system, including the financial ramifications as well as the gatekeeper aspect of it, has limited its ability to be successful and be as impactful in a positive way as it could have been. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen here, but whatever happens, we shall see. Some might worry that this could create, more insularity for MLS, but you forget that Major League Soccer was recently granted, basically higher status even within the DA system recently, and that caused a lot of uproar, and that was a problem because it wasn't based on sporting merit; it was based on arbitrary gatekeeper decisions, and so I don't see it. I don't see the elimination of the Development Academy helping Major League Soccer. I think if the DA system were to go away, and again, we have no idea whether that is going to happen or not. But if we had a Development Academy system that were to go away, and Major League Soccer had their own internal system, that very much seems like what Major League Soccer was already aiming for with their pressure on U.S. soccer and influence to create anyway through the DA itself. So I don't see it. I think what needs to happen is just like in the adult aspect. I think in the youth aspect, there needs to be one pyramid of leagues, and they're all connected, and they're connected through sporting merit, and you let the teams play. And so a club may have a really good U15 squad, and they may be playing in the highest division in their area, and then you may have a U13 squad that's not quite as high. They may be in the second, third division in their area. Let things play out the way they should play, and let the players and the teams and the coaches themselves find their own level. And doing that, I think you would see American soccer improve a lot. And keep this in mind. The big issue here is that the way we are currently set up and operating in the youth space is you're driving past teams to go play other teams, and you never face them, and you're not necessarily playing in leagues. You're in a lot of places in the country. Most of your games are coming because of tournaments, and you may do some league things, but tournaments have become this big cash cow for the organizers, and so that becomes this big priority, and that adds to the travel and the expense. We've gotten away from making this about what's best for development of the kids, of the players, and not the other way around. And so it's not to say that it's bad that you make a living operating in the youth soccer space, whether as a coach or a club or as a tournament director. It's that when that becomes at the expense of development, at the expense of participation and access, at the expense of the player, that's where I have a big problem. And the Development Academy didn't fix that problem. It made the problem worse. It created more tension, more strife, more disagreements, more travel in many cases, more expenses in many cases. And the Federation has for too long has gotten caught up in the rat race of appearances. I have a saying that I use when I looking at organizations or people or whatever, and it's this: fluff without stuff is not enough. And what that simply means is that you can dress it up any way you want to. If there's not a core if there's not a core character, if there's not a core purpose, etc., then that's not enough. You're going to be found out. You're going to be exposed eventually that what you're doing isn't good enough, or that your organization isn't operated well enough. Whatever the case may be, it's underwhelming. Eventually, you will be found out, and this, I think, is the case. Is that there's been too much focus on the nicest uniforms and playing these schedules that require travel that should be operated at a professional level, in terms of the players being professional players. I just think that we have gotten the cart before the horse about should we try to be proper and do things well. Yes. However, the amount of money that we're putting into things is just gotten bonkers crazy, and it's all in this effort to dress it up well. Think that we're actually like doing it well because we look good. I've gone and watched matches throughout Europe and at the youth space, and I can't tell you the number of times that I see assistant referees are just dads. They're extra players. They're, volunteers. You may have the center ref that's paid, but then the two on the outside holding up the flags are volunteers. And in America, at the youth level, we have these paid referees all over the place. Expenses that, that can triple your referee budget for one match. By having paid ARs everywhere, but they feel like they have to. Why? Because the people have paid so much money. So we feel like we have to give them a show. We have to dress it up. So maybe we should get back to the priority. Like, how do we make it a great developmental experience, a great experience for the player, a great experience for the families, and get the focus where it should be, on the actual game. And then we do get the things around it done well, but not at the expense of that. And I just think we've put way too much emphasis on the arbitrary things that don't really matter. In other news, as you know, I'm a big Barca fan, and if you're watching the show, you can tell. I am not a fan of President Bartomeu at Barcelona. I feel like he's gotten away from the club identity that was really created and crafted under Cruyff, and then really built up and exploited under the under Pep Guardiola, and in recent years is eroded. Yesterday it was announced that 2 vice presidents and 4 other board members have resigned. Bartomeu is entering his last year at the helm, but I've just been very unhappy with his leadership, and leadership matters. We talk about it on the show all the time. Leadership matters, and so there's more turmoil there. Anyone who's followed the club closely at all in the last few years knows that things have not been good, and it is continued to kind of just go off the rails. And this is a situation where Bartomeu, who was reelected in 2015, has now seen 7 vice presidents quit under his leadership. The guy is just not good for Barca. It's not good leadership, and it is indicative of cultural issues at the board level. We've seen Messi speak up about it quite a few times, and Messi's not one who likes to speak up about stuff. So if he's doing it, it's a real big problem, and it's something he feels like he has to address. And in this case, here we are again, more issues regarding Barcelona, its board, etc. And it gets us back to what we were just talking about with the U.S. Soccer Development Academy and the board and the leadership, not knowing about some of these lawsuit things and others. Leadership matters. And the Development Academy, making sure it's run for the best optimal outcome for the country, which is player development. That's leadership. That's their job, is to provide oversight. And so they've got to make sure that occurs, that happens. That's a situation where you have to see that leadership play out, and we just haven't seen it so far. So it is curious to see. We'll see if Glenn Crooks' tweet comes out. It's just going to depend on some of that news and just kind of following where that goes. I don't know. But that was an interesting rumor that broke last night. Again, my sources have not confirmed that rumor, so we'll see if anything comes of it today or in the future, but it was definitely eye-catching. Speaking of eye-catching, you should go to ductigbrand.com, DUKTIG brand.com. Order yourself a notebook or a t-shirt. get ready for the upcoming season. We will have soccer again, and we will get through this pandemic and eventually be back out on the fields. And there's never been a better time than to do it, than today. And use promo code DWSHOW, and you'll get 10% off of your order at ducticbrand.com. DW Show, you'll get 10% off of your order. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back into the show. Thanks for tuning in on this Good Friday, April the 10th. We are joined by a friend of the show and a friend of mine, Kefren Fuller. Kef, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good, man. Good to get back on with you, man. How are you guys doing out there?
You know what? We're hanging in there. Everybody in the family's good. We are trying to do as much of our social distancing and staying away from people as possible. For the introverts in my family, that's been a little bit more enjoyable than those of us in the family that are extroverts. But we're getting through it. It's just one of those things where we're having to kind of let the whole thing play out and be patient and follow protocols, and hopefully, we all get back to what we really like to do, which is to get on the field and watch matches, etc. So, how are things on your side of the pond over there in the Netherlands?
It's been, obviously, I think around the world, we all know everyone's going through similar situations. So it's been a little calm here, but, of course, everyone's a little bit just wondering, obviously how to keep people safe and obviously practicing social distancing. But actually, some of the stores, which I don't think are essential, are open. They got some clothing stores, little baby shops, some bakeries. They have rules in place, like only 2 or 3 people can be in the store, which I assume is going around the States as well. But it seems like Holland's kind of also wanting people to use their common sense as well. They are kind of going around finding people if they're going over the four persons or more type of thing. So they're kind of trying to police it that way. But everyone's been pretty focused on social distancing and stuff here. I actually have to head out here when we're on the call. I have to go outside real quick. But everyone's been kind of relaxed from what I see.
So I told the story of my son coming back from Holland on the show a few weeks ago, whenever all of that went down. for the audience, he was over with your program in Amsterdam, and we had no intentions of bringing him home early. We were actually supposed to be there right now. We were coming over for this week leading up to Easter. It was spring break for my younger son and my wife, and who's a school teacher, and so we were just, kind of having our, my wife and I were actually out in California. We were having a conversation about, what we were observing in the news. And my wife was, more concerned. She's a mom, right? And so she's like,
of course,
what do you think? And this, and I'm like, hey, it's fine. Everything's good. And and so when we were out there, we just decided to give him a call that Saturday, and he's like, everything's good, the team's still training, everything's fine, and we're like, okay, well, let's just check with Delta and let's just see what the options are. And he was like, okay, I don't really want to come home early, but if you guys think I need to, that's, I understand, kind of thing. That was kind of his viewpoint.
Yeah.
He didn't want to go anywhere. And so
of course.
we're like, let's leave it up to Delta, right? I mean, let's just figure out like what the options are. And so as I told in that story, when Delta offered to fully refund our trip over and actually give us a partial refund on flying him home the very next day, so like in 12 hours from that phone call, he was on a plane coming back, we were just like, hey, I think this is what needs to happen. We don't know why, and then
why are they allowing this to happen so quickly?
Right. And so, you and I were touching base in those days right after when he was coming home, and and I was like, I'm not really sure. We just felt like whatever. And then when all hell broke loose that week, and borders closing and this happening, and then the club shut down, and the Netherlands shut football down for like 30 days and all this, he's like, I think you made the right call. And I'm like, we need to thank Delta for making the right call because
exactly
he would have still been over there had it been me, because I just was like, I think everything's okay. I think we're gonna and it just went crazy. So but speaking of that, and everything kind of going crazy, what kind of impact has this had on what you do over there in terms of the connection in relation to American clubs and American players? So explain for the audience, what are some of the things that you provide, and how has those opportunities, how have those been affected right now with all of the pandemic crisis around the world?
Yeah, it's a real interesting time. I mean, so we essentially we obviously have our own club in Amsterdam called Jogo Fortis, and we've been bringing players now to our residency program, and also just bringing players to come showcase themselves. And it changed things quickly. Everyone obviously had to go back home. So I was actually in Copenhagen at the time that me and you were talking about Jaden going, because I had a couple of players from the showcase in Copenhagen. So it ended up being a situation where, looking at it, it's put things on hold. But it's interesting. I mean, the kind of what we've been looking to provide anyway is more of a pathway for players to try to get into professional soccer. So that's kind of our niche. It's not so much, I think, soccer tours, if you get what I mean. So people have kind of contacted me and say, hey, after all this stuff is done, we still want to come over because, they're trying to get opportunities. So I've had kind of those calls. We had some very interesting things lined up for March. We had some scouts from some big EPL clubs that were actually going to come in March to check out what we were doing. We had some very talented players from DA clubs and MLS affiliated clubs as well that were going to come and kind of be scouted between the 2004 and 2003 age groups. So it was it kind of put that on hold, but at the same time, it just allows us to really just restructure restructure everything that we're doing and say, okay, how is it going to work when everything opens up again? In terms of the residency, the showcase, what can we do better? How can we formulate even tighter connections with certain clubs and whatnot? So for me, it's and like for everyone, I mean, I don't think I'm in the worst position of anything, but I just think it's just now let's just see how we can make the most of it, which I think a lot of people are in the same boat. Like, how do you make the most of it and see how you can move forward?
In terms of what you're seeing over in Europe, in the addressing the pandemic and the restrictions, etc., are they saying any kind of timelines for for the Netherlands, for example, in terms of lifting restrictions or getting back to normal, basically? Have they been given any kind of guidelines and updates about when that would take place and what that might look like when things kind of are getting back to normal?
Yeah, I mean, April 28th is the new date they gave us, but I think that's just the date that they give us to say, okay, yeah, we're going to go another month type of thing, if you get what I mean. They haven't, I mean, what I'm kind of hearing, the sentiment that I get is maybe around June, July, like things will start to come back. I mean, the prime minister came and said that there's not look, it's going to be a long time before we get back to normal, but I think he meant just totally operating how we were before. I think they'll start lifting restrictions and certain things because they have been doing it. Like I said, the ice cream shop around us opened the other day. Certain small businesses are kind of operating still. If I'm being honest, like our little FedEx Kinko's version, little mom and pop shop that's running. Toy stores are running. Things have obviously shut down, but I've seen now they're kind of managing it. And again, I don't know if it's not for me to say whether or not it's the best way or not the best way, but I do see a lot of small businesses still operating, other than like the restaurants and kind of places where you would gather at cafes and stuff. Those are kind of shut down, of course. But things where, if you want to go in the shop and get a shirt, or I actually live above an athletic store where we live in my small town, Schach, and they've been open pretty much throughout the whole pandemic. So yeah, it's been kind of hit and miss. With it hasn't been a total shutdown in my opinion, but things have but people are obviously practicing social distancing and whatnot. But we just wait for the 28th and see what they say.
So I wanted to. I don't know if you saw this late last night here in the States. There was a tweet that came out from Glenn Crooks saying that as early as today, there could be an announcement that the U.S. Soccer Development Academy for the boys and girls were going to be terminated. I checked with some sources. I have not had this rumor confirmed. So, I don't know exactly what that would mean, if that means terminated for the season, if that means terminated permanently. I have no idea. But I wanted to get your thoughts about inclusivity. And, before moving, full time to Holland, you were based in the, DC metro area, and you were running Joga domestically, stateside, as a club, and developing players and in trying to provide opportunities and pathways, from this side of the pond. What have you seen in your time operating in the American soccer ecosystem? What have you seen in regards to access and in regards to opportunities and inclusivity for clubs, for players, etc.?
Yeah, so essentially when it comes to American soccer, it's that's essentially the biggest issue. That the word that you said, inclusivity. It's you are, which I understand. There's always a kind of barriers that you have to overcome. That's just everything in life and anything that you try to do. But the barriers that I think are witnessed in the States slow down so much or stop so much ambition and essentially make really and truly, what's a unique soccer club in your area? Can you name it? Why is it unique? Why is it different? What do they try to do different? Is anyone else trying to do anything different? I think when you see these programs, you see, oh, okay, they're doing futsal, we'll do futsal. They're doing street soccer, we'll do street soccer. They're going to Disney, we'll go to Disney. And it's not just it's and listen, I understand what competition. You have competition, they're doing it, I got to do it. But it's more just there's nothing really to differentiate. Well, I haven't been in US a long time, man.
Differentiate. I think that's the word you're looking for.
Yeah, there you go. Differentiate yourself from other clubs, or what really sets you apart. You can't build an identity, so that's the whole thing. That one of the reasons I left, because I think if you try to build an identity or something different, then you see it's not really inclusive. It's too many the barriers that they try to put in place. Like case in point, I back in the day I was trying to talk to MLS about, hey, is there a way I can build a pro club and be a part of what what people are doing? I know people might want to invest and do things like that, and I came away from the talk with them, and it was like, MLS clubs at that time, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, are going for 150, 200 million. You have a nice story, but, maybe try USL type of thing. And, yeah, I mean, of course, that kind of puts you off. And then all my years of coming to Holland, back in 2010, even when I had my first trip, they're telling me, yeah, you can start your own club tomorrow if you wanted to. You could, well, not necessarily tomorrow, but you can actually start the groundwork. And then next season, if you have this, and this, then you can apply and become your own club. And so, and then, obviously you're in the league, and if you keep winning, you can promote to become professional. Of course, there's going to be barriers when you get there too, but it was just way more welcoming compared to what you were facing in the States. And then that just leads to our whole ecosystem and how every club, coach, player, parent, investors, everybody, that leads to how you operate and why you do certain things. That's why we have a lack of world-class players, or considering how much money is being put in the game, how many people are playing the game. It's so a lot of potential is being missed. So I just saw it as for our vision and what we're trying to do, we can never really attain that in the States how it's currently constructed. There's no way that we can do it. And so for us, it said, okay, it's better just to come over here and shoot our shot over here. If you miss, you miss. But at least we have an opportunity to try to essentially, go for it. And the crazy thing is that you meet people here and they think the project's very interesting, and they see, okay, well, let us know how you're doing with this, and there's more interest in investment, and we want to sponsor this or we want to do this. In the States, I never really got that. You know what I mean? What are you going to say? I have a youth club, and people will talk to you about sponsorships if you have 5,000 kids or something. You know what I mean? Because it's really just a numbers game based off of that, and not based off of necessarily the quality that you can create and you can provide. So, yeah, man. I mean, I guess to go back to that inclusivity, it's you can't build something that you identify with that you can that can compete at the highest level. In my opinion, I mean, I think there's definitely more clubs coming from different backgrounds probably than more before, I assume. But still, you're kind of on the outside looking in. Like, how do you get into DA? And going back to you saying, like, determination of DA. Like, how do you get into DA? Who choose, like, why does this club get into DA and this club doesn't? What are the what are the parameters? What's needed to do that? And that's something that a lot of clubs and a lot of people should know. It's for me, it's like is so exclusive that it made no sense to keep pouring so much energy in the game stateside, especially from a development standpoint. So our focus has been saying, okay, if we can't pour energy there, then we're going to try to do it over here. So come here, come get exposure, come get developed, come get scouted, and go from there.
In terms of development the impact of inclusivity on development,
yes.
A lot of times, and I was talking about this earlier in the show when I was discussing this rumor that broke yesterday, late last night, about the termination or possible termination of the U.S. Soccer Development Academy. Is that in my view the focus in youth soccer does not place as its primary focus the development of players, and there are other ancillary, arbitrary things that are a focus. Like you mentioned, the quantity of players in your club, the stadium or home grounds, the amount of money you have in the bank account, all of these things that have zero, and I mean zero, to do with player development. So when you look at inclusivity and it's in the lack of inclusivity and its impact on player development, when you were running stateside, Joga stateside, you could have the best squad at, let's say, U15 in the area, or U12 or whatever, but it didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Access was not granted just because you were developing the best players. It was like, okay, great, we'll take it from here. And you were, you had the realities, because this is something I think that a lot of people just aren't necessarily fully aware of. The realities of these development academies, Major League Soccer academies, but other development academies coming in and basically, recruiting players over a certain age. When it got into those U.S. Soccer Development Academy ages, they would basically come in and say, okay, hey, we'll take it from here. Guys, come over here and play for the development academy, and not being allowed in, the not having the access as a club to that environment, and not being inclusive in that way, as I understand it, had a very adverse effect on your ability to continue to develop and operate at older ages because of the fact that there wasn't inclusivity. Walk us through some of that you experienced at kind of the last 12, 24 months that you were operating Joga actively here in the States, in terms of this lack of inclusivity and the impact it had on you being able to retain players that you were developing. And it wasn't necessarily they were leaving for greener pastures from a development standpoint. It was more about the pomp and circumstance and the kind of like, hey, I want to be the cool kid and have that DA badge. They're telling me they can do more for me than a non-DA experience. So for the audience, can you walk us through that, what you experienced those 12, 24 months of the impact of not being inclusive?
Yeah, so the last 12 to 24 months, we actually created a concept called Joga 30, where we were like, look, we only want to focus on the 30 players maximum between myself and my colleague James Myers, and focus and say, hey, you want to focus on trying to become professional, put yourself in the best position to become professional. We're going to train 5-6 days a week. We have mixed age groups. It's about really just helping them get opportunity and kind of showcase them and whatnot. And to be honest, I think the kids were pretty dedicated to it. But right when our first year of doing that, that's when the DA was being created, in terms of going to other clubs. And then I started to see a little bit more of just, okay, I think people are going to be interested in it. It's like the forbidden fruit thing. Like we got to taste it. You know what I mean? And I'm always my thought is always like hit first, don't get caught sleeping. You know, and so I was like, I'm not going to sleep on this, and all of a sudden and have to convince people why they should stay in my program. I'm just saying, okay, if you want to taste it, then do that. Now, fair credit to them, a lot of them wanted to stay a part of what we were doing, but also I just saw it as, okay, we got to let this thing run and let people see what it is, because if they don't, then they we always have that lingering around. And so we kind of let them go, and it was crazy. I mean, I think there was one club that took in one age group took like 9 of the players. I remember we had 30, but like 8 or 9 of them went into the 03 age group immediately, so that that showed me, I'm like, okay, and even from that club, like we had 1 or 2 come from that club, and they were like on the 3rd or 4th team, and by the time they finished with us and we trained them for a year, they ended up making the DA team. So we were like, so yeah, I mean, is it about development? No, that isn't the focus. But again, the end. I put this on Twitter a couple days ago. I said, what's your endpoint? Why do you do something, right? Because you do something because you have an endpoint, and when you have an endpoint, that allows you that tells you what you have to do, why you have to do it, and then you figure out what you have to do to get there. We don't have an endpoint. So when we were telling people about pro soccer at 9, 10, 11 years old, they think you're insane. But now these kids are older, and they start to see some of their peers who maybe made the national team, maybe gone over to Europe and doing other things. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, this overseas thing. We see what you're talking about. Well, we always had an endpoint, and we focused on the endpoint, and a lot of people are just focused on what team is my kid playing on? Does he, and all those different things. And it's fine. It's just a different mindset. And so that's what I saw with the DA coming. I said, I still don't think people understand. I just think this is just another, like you said, another badge, something to say this is the highest level, so you need to come in, and that's all it meant. And I think, and listen, I'm fine with our players being recruited. In fact, if your players aren't being recruited, you aren't doing a pretty good job. So your players should be getting recruited, scouted, people wanting to take them. That's totally fine. I just saw it as a way. The way I saw it, I said, this isn't what's happening in the States. Just doesn't get my blood boiling. It just doesn't. It doesn't get me like out of bed and excited to coach. Me and James always talked about it. We said, what? Imagine us doing this for 10 more years. Where will we be? Like what would we be? And listen, I totally understand. Like it's a dream job to be a soccer coach. I think if you're done playing, it's a dream job. I mean, you get to stay in the sport that you love, and for many people in the States, and even myself included, it pays for all the bills. So I think it was absolutely phenomenal. But at the same time, if you have ambition, trying to go to another level, unfortunately, you can't fulfill that ambition, and you'll just end up, in my opinion, and this is from talking to other coaches, and having this a little bit in a rut, because you're doing the same. It's like Groundhog Day. You're doing the same thing constantly over and over, and your endpoint, your like, how are you tracking your success? Like for me, I was like, with players that I have, if I rate you and we develop you, college is the minimum, for you as a player, because we feel that should be our standard. So we didn't even speak on it on college soccer. Like, oh, we gotta look at this school. I mean, yeah, do your schoolwork, make sure your education. But we always said, if you go to school, it's education. Go to school for education. If you want to be a soccer player, you gotta go overseas. Or even if you get a contract in the States, you gotta, you have to focus on your football. So don't try to. To me, I don't necessarily. I just told him from my experience with George Mason. I played a year and a half of, maybe even less than a year and a half, a year and 4 months of soccer, and 4 years of competitive soccer because of the schedule. So, it almost. I mean, it was a good experience, but really, education is the number one. So that makes sense. But no, I just think like looking at it all, like with the people that we had in Droga 30 and just how things were going, I said, you know what, it makes sense to get overseas because we need to go to the next level too. Like we need to know these scouts, we need to know these sporting directors, we need to meet these agents, we need to figure out a way to get our kids from here over there. So the only way you could do that is more efficiently, in my opinion, is being over here. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. And yeah, I mean, with the DA, the first year after the report of it, most of the players were disgruntled. They thought it was below par from what we were doing. That's all. I mean, and I told them to be different, and I also said it's good that they would experience something different and not just always what I said or what James said. So it's good they also got that exposure. But yeah, I mean, they did say that they think the level wasn't as high, and but what was great from that, I think 4 or 5 players moved overseas out of that group the following year, so they actually still stuck with the dream. They saw the DA, they stuck with the dream and said, hey, we're going to go and check this out and go overseas and try to make the most of ourselves.
In terms of inclusivity, another area I wanted to ask you about is representation. How important is it for kids of all backgrounds and all ethnicities to see an example? Someone that looks like them in terms of being involved in the programming. It might be a coach, it might be a referee. I mean, it does not. I'm not necessarily saying that every single person has to be X, Y, or Z. Nothing like rigid, but like how important is it that if you're a young player who's not white and who's maybe not affluent, but loves the game and wants to play, how important is it for you to show up to a club and you're like, oh, hey, well, that assistant coach or that referee or this volunteer, somebody around the club looks like me? How important is that, in terms of inclusivity, and how have you, as part of that answer, compare and contrast what you've seen in Europe and especially in Holland versus what you would see, in a typical youth soccer experience in the States?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting here is so I'll speak on Amsterdam. People do kind of. Which everywhere. I mean, they kind of, like our club. Our club is about, I want to say 80-90% Moroccan. We have some Suriname kids. It's pretty much Moroccan and Suriname at the youth level. Then when you get into the other teams, the first team and some of the friendship teams, it's mixed everything. I mean, it's very important. I think it's very important for people to feel, like I said, represented. It makes them feel comfortable, of course, when they can relate. A lot of people, even when people say, I don't see color, I don't see those things. Like, no, it's okay to see that someone's a different culture or a different color. Because, like, in my opinion, I don't think you just wipe that away. Like, it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to treat anybody differently or with a lack of respect. But I think it's okay to notice, you know what I mean, that someone's from a different culture or from a different background. And I think for a lot of, let's say, players in the States, there's times you can get into teams and you have nothing to relate to. You don't have that. Also because of how this, how it kind of works in the States is, your parents drop you off to training, they drop you back. They pick you up, they bring you back, they bring you to the games. Everything's kind of planned around them. Where at our club, me and James were talking about it the other day, 10, 11, 12-year-olds are riding on their bike. Jaden, who was with us this whole summer, not in the summer, sorry, the spring, if you look at the showcase group, you had guys who were Puerto Rican, Brazil, African, African American, white American, all those different groups. I think even Filipino. So they were all like different groups, but like they would also socialize together. They had to ride the bikes, see what time they're going to eat, just different things. And I think here in like what I see in Amsterdam is that the kids are a little bit more. They can kind of socialize for themselves a little bit more. They kind of do things. They're a little bit more independent. So they kind of do things. They kind of do things on their own schedule, and so because they have a bike and they have a little bit more freedom. So I think it's like they're able to connect in a different kind of way. So even if they joined a different club, like because I'll see it as well. Like you'll see a Moroccan kid on a team that's all white. Or you'll see we have a kid, he's on our team. He's the only white kid there. And I remember James said, "Hey, Mick, it's like Mick doesn't care though. Like all his friends are Moroccan. You know what I mean? And we never see his parents. His parents never come up and talk to us and say, what kind of club is this? Are you going to do this? It's just more what we see from the experience that we've had. It's just way more individual. The kids are able to kind of frame who they are more like through their own experiences, and then I think that allows them to kind of pick the teams and the people they want to be around. And some people are of course more comfortable just being around people from their own culture, but then you also see the mix as well. So yeah, I mean that's the thing I kind of see. I think I think in the States, I think if you're coming from, let's say, an immigrant background and you join like one of these clubs, it's sometimes maybe harder to fit in because you're definitely going to have to include, like the parents are going to have to include this family to be a part of it and that type of thing. And so that can be challenging, for some groups, and for some it works well, for some it doesn't. But that's just my observation from what I've seen.
Yeah, and I've seen that as well. I mean, I think that the big difference is when it comes to the inclusivity is the conversations that are had as part of just the culture of the organization. You have a different perspective. A lot of people don't know what they don't know. They don't realize the impact of this. I know when I used to run my own club that was similar in size to what you were doing with Joga 30, we had kids from every continent except Antarctica. I think it was 10 countries in that squad of like 25 players. And but one of the things that was a conscious effort for me was that every single one of our coaches, and we were all volunteers for that club, every one of us, like I was the only white guy. Then I had, a coach from Colombia, I had a coach from Uruguay who was an assistant coach. Like and so they helped, build bridges and make connections in communities that, that we wanted to help and provide access and opportunity to, and for. And so that was a conscious effort. Our conversations were different because, we were looking for players on the outside of the system, and it was the dream at the time was to get to a place of what you were talking about, where our standard is no less than college and whatever. But our first year or two in, when we were doing this, our whole goal was, let's just get kids playing that don't have the opportunity right now, and so in that we saw the connection, and what was kind of funny to me. And now, at the time I had never been to Europe. And so now, having gone to Europe so many times, seeing this stuff for myself, I feel like we created a little bit of European football culture in that inside of that club. The DNA of that club had a global perspective, and I think it's why we had those players from all over the world who felt comfortable as part of this, hodgepodge of kids from all over, coming together, because their families as well as our kids, it was more of something they were used to from where they were from, rather than the homogenized setup that so many encounter. And I think, as I look at the landscape of American youth soccer, that word inclusivity, opportunity, access, all those things, representation, it matters, and it matters a lot more than I think in America that we realize in American youth soccer. I just think that lack of, your ability to go into a community and build whatever club you want to build, and people say, well, you can do that. No, you can't. You describe today the barriers that you come up against, as you build. You can start that way. You can try to, build an identity, and you could purchase some land and you can do some stuff, but eventually you're going to hit that glass ceiling. How do you break it? How do you get around it? That's been something that I think has been very tough for a lot of people to work out and work through. There are certainly some outliers out there that have tried to find success in different ways, and I'm not saying it's impossible to do, but it's as you pointed out, it's not welcomed by the U.S. Soccer Federation. That is not the posture, the mentality of the federation to do it that way. So, look, as you look into the future, best of luck with all this stuff going on. How can people connect with you, follow your work, and if they want to know more about the club experience, the opportunities that are available in Europe, how can they connect with you to learn more about those as well?
Yeah, I mean, they can connect with us at what are the email? If you follow us on Instagram, or my Instagram is at Kefren Fuller. I'm pretty active on there. But then also for the club, jogasoc@gmail.com. And I mean, if you look us up, I guess I can also put the website www.joga-ams.com. For like Joga Amsterdam. And so, I mean, they can follow us there. Joga Fortis. I mean, pretty sure if you put anything in Google with Joga, you'll be able to find us and check out what we're doing. But I mean, we're just steadily building. I mean, I think we're just at the first. We just put our shovel in the ground, as they say, So we're just starting to dig out and build a foundation. So we're definitely looking for players that are very, very motivated. They have to be very independently motivated. I mean, that's the one thing, even with Jaden coming over. I mean, he came over for the first residency part he actually did by himself over with us. And then when we had other players, he came for the second portion. He came, I think we talked about it. He came back. He was already independent, but I think he came back even more independent, but also just very motivated himself. And so we're looking for players and kids that are very motivated to try to reach their goals, no matter how big, to develop themselves. And and we want to, when they come on our trips or things like that, it's very focused. We want you to focus on trying to become a professional and try to figure out what that means, and that's something that we try to help the players understand what that is. And the biggest thing I focus on with American players is probably the independence part, because, football is football. I mean, you got to get in the environment, catch up to the speed of play, learn tactically. We can speak on those things all day, which are big things. But I also think it's just the independence and also being able to adjust to a different situation are two of the things that I think players really come away from in our program. So, those are some of the ways you can find us, and that's kind of I guess what we're looking for over the next coming years.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're right. He came back more independent, so much so that I had to remind him that I'm still dad, and I'm the Mufasa in this house. And you're Simba. So just remember, right? And
exactly.
And his retort was, "Well, you remember Mufasa died," and I was like, "Okay, all right, let's go." It's been good. It's been a great experience for him, and I think others would get a lot out of experiencing different culture and different opportunities as well. So, Kev, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it. Best of luck. Stay safe over there. Say hello to the fam for us, and like I said, hopefully all this will get over sooner rather than later, and we can somewhat get back to normal going forward. So appreciate your time today.
Hey, you too, man. Hey, thank you again for having me on, and all the blessings to your family as well, man.
Thank you. That is Kefern Fuller. Again, check him out on Instagram. You can check him out at joga-ams.com as well, and see what they have going on. Our sponsor this half hour is Charity Water. You can learn more about Charity Water at charitywater.org. They provide clean drinking water to people all over the world, and you can be a part of that story today by going to charitywater.org. We'll be right back after this.
No one, no man, no woman, no child should ever have to drink green water with bugs, with algae, with disease in it. Bad water and a lack of toilets kills more people than all the wars in the world. We know how to bring clean drinking water right now to every single person on earth. And when you can bring water into communities, it truly transforms them. It changes everything. Or you could know that you'd made a difference. You could know that you had truly impacted the life of a family, of a community, of a region. There was either clean water or there wasn't. We believe in a world where every single person has clean and safe water to drink, and we will continue fighting until that happens.
Thanks for watching the show. Thanks for tuning in today. We appreciate it as always. Hope you have a good Friday and a great Easter weekend. Wherever you are in the country, in the world, stay safe. Listen to your local officials. Hopefully we can all get through this sooner rather than later. I appreciate Kefern joining the show. It's always great to catch up with Kef. And look, we'll keep monitoring the situation with the Development Academy and other aspects of U.S. soccer, as we always do. Stay safe. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see everyone again on Monday.